we're doing wheel arch again. I think we'll be doing wheel arch for a while. Hopefully this is going to be following me making a mould for a wheel arch and not descending into a sobbing mess. So I'll show you where we are at the moment. So I left the last one. I think I was making a bracket for this. The headlight is going to kind of sit there. I've decided against having the headlight as part of the kind of poking through shape, partly because it's flatter than I really want that shape to be, and partly because I think it will make life harder. Of course I could come to regret that decision. So old one already taped on, ready to be used as part of the mould. That's the stuff I showed you before. Whole pile of other bits there. Whole pile of what I'm calling corner bits. So these will all, that's like the radius there. And oh yeah, I've got a load of those, a load of smaller ones. And finally, I've got like the bottom part. So I'm going to screw that into my plywood there, so that gives nice base to start from. So I've literally just sat down to start editing the latest video, and it's part 43. Now that's significant for me, but I'm going to do that suspense thing, find out. I'll tell you at the end why part 43 is significant. Anyone who actually knows me really well, that's probably only my kids, one or two other people, will know why 43 is significant. But if you fancy a guess, stick it in the comments now. Whilst I'm thinking about other channels I've watched and have inspired me to build my car, Skidmore's Garage is another one. He is very mini based, kind of, sort of. They look like minis. I don't really think much of what he ends up with has much to do with a mini. He also races stuff as well. Really interesting channel. And of course, my mate who lives just down the road, Brian, with Oak Swamp, is another interesting one. I in some ways I like to think he sort of represents the other side of the petrol head coin. He builds rat rods. He's currently building this little thing. Does series. He does mainly series on a build, but also some other bits and bobs that he gets up to. A very interesting guy. Definitely worth a follow. So it's looking really pretty, isn't it? So I've stacked them all together and just taped them up. And I think we're about the height I need to, because we can, with a straight line, I can clear the top of the headlight. Obviously I don't want a straight line, but we have a slight curve there. It is going to be rather flat on the top. I suppose it would curve in there, so maybe it won't be so quite so. Oh no, it can't curve in there because we've got a wheel there to cover, haven't we? Yeah, I'm a little bit scared it's going to look quite flat, but I can't really see I can do much about that. I've got to put these sections in here, and then what I'm going to do is just a bit more tape and a bit more the sort of plastic weld. Of course, one of the beauties, one of the beauties with using 3D is I can easily weld the different bits together just using a soldering iron. Right, so I'm going to get on with that. The plan is I want to get this part as ready as possible, because once I start linking it to that part, I'm then stuck with the whole thing in position here, because obviously I can't take that off to sand it all down. So I need to get this bit kind of 95% prepared before I come back to this position. I wouldn't call myself an expert in anything really, but the closest I am probably is in welding bits of plastic. From years of fixing these transponders, I've quite often got to weld up the case. So I'll show you the way that I've sort of developed over the years. Obviously, so use a soldering iron, and it's on about 250 degrees, so you know, not far off the temperature you use it for soldering. And then just literally on the bit you need to weld, I kind of go along, so you get these little ridges, and then if need be, then go back over and kind of smooth it out. On the outside, need, obviously, if you want any sort of decent finish, you need to smooth it out. On the inside here, I'll probably just leave it all ridged up like that. I'm having a rethink about this. There's a handy diagram here off the Westfield site. So the light at the moment is on pretty well bang on the minimum height, so I'd have to go to IVA with this kind of jacked up virtually onto the bump stops, and then it means this across to this sort of fill-in space is going to be virtually horizontal, and I'd rather that was a little bit, as you can see, if we've got a little bit of an angle, it's below the light height. So what I'm now thinking is going back to plan A and just having to put the lights on in a different place for the IVA, so the light can be where are we, in from the outside, it can be 400 mil in. So when we look at that, I can have the light anywhere in this space for the IVA. So I think what I'm probably going to do is have a temporary light position for the IVA. I don't know how I stand with MOTs then. It might be I have to sort of move the headlights for the MOTs, but I just think it's just looking, with all that lot on there, it's just looking too tall to me. I think even just dropping this down 50 mil would just mean I can have a bit of a slope on there, so we'd be looking at an angle that looks like that. It looks far more natural to me. I think what I'm going to do is have a little look at LMP cars, because of course I want this thing to be aerodynamic, but I don't want it looking horrible. And yet again, everything's compromise, isn't it? Compromise. When you look at the spec of these, if I have a window and I go to the IVA with a window here with no light behind it, would look maybe a little bit odd. But the indicators have quite a big position thing on, so I could put the indicator in there. And also there doesn't seem to be anything for what they call the driving lights, side lights, whatever you want to call them, so I think they could go in there for the IVA as well, and it would just be the headlight, which I'd either just use the mount I've made but would be moved, or just have to make a temporary mount. So I've had a little Google, and you can see from these they are really quite upright but with a bit of a curve, and they come down after the wheel. So I think I'm definitely going to move that headlight. I've got to say, this is going to seem a bit contradictory. I'm no real fan of the look of these. They do look very kind of blunt, stubby nose to me. not as sort of nice looking as maybe the 80s ones, which were more wedgy. But maybe that's just me being a bit old-fashioned, and you know, my favourite Formula 1 car is still the Lotus 78, which is not much on a kind of a wedge shape, isn't it? So I think what I've decided to do, I'm definitely going to move that light in for the IVA, and I'm going to give it a bit more of a curve, a bit more of a taper, rather than it being up and straight. It's going to taper a bit more. Now I've just got to work out how to do that taper that's repeatable, because of course both sides have got to match, haven't they? So I've given my temporary light fixing a little bit of a trim, so it's now 50mm lower, and that's definitely giving me a little bit more room to play with. So I've been beavering away all day, or rather the 3D printer's been doing a lot of the beavering away, and I'm now at this stage. So I've got a curve there that should be big enough space for the wheel to turn, because of course we've got to remember stuff like that. I've done 3 dowels here so it always goes back in the same position. Curve here. This here I've 3D printed, so it goes in a few mil and there's a ridge. So with lots of plastic padding smoothing all that off. But the idea with this is it will have a ridge, because that should help kind of stiffen it up, and it will also go in a little bit so there isn't any you know, like a blunt or sharp edge or whatever that's going to upset the IVA people. But also just having a few millimeters going in that way obviously effectively stiffens the whole thing, and then the more I can do little bits and bobs like that means the less material needed, the lighter I can make it. So there I am at the moment. I'm now going to dig out from the trailer. Somewhere in there is that foam. That's the correct foam this time, that you can sand and all that. But I seem to remember last time that the glue you stick it with needs overnight to set. So I think what I'll do is I'll get that done and setting, and then tomorrow I can hit it again. I suspect I'm repeating myself from the video of doing the front end, but my advice is, if you're ever thinking of building something like this yourself, if you can buy off the shelf body parts at a reasonable price, it's probably worth doing it, because this does take a hell of a long time. It feels a little odd at this stage, because each sort of bit I do, it kind of looks worse and worse. So what I've done, this is that foam, the correct foam this time, that you can file and doesn't disintegrate as soon as you put resin on it. So that's on the top there. These aren't attached. I put a couple of bits in so that I can, where the profile changes, I can kind of smooth those in. And that, you then use this Gorilla Glue stuff that you have to hold it all together. You're supposed to clamp it, but of course that's impossible really with this shape. So I've taped it all together. It takes a couple of hours. So basically this will sit like this overnight now, and then I'm gonna start smoothing it out. I'm gonna radius that, get that the right sort of angle that I want it, and use these trims. I'll then stick these on to there so that I can put the same kind of lip on here, because it's going to come all the way around to here. Is going to be one piece. Then the back half of the wheel arch, if you like, will be effectively the front of the side pod, which will come in here. Not sure yet whether I'll fill that bit in or let the air off the tyre go through the side pod. I know, looking at some Aero stuff, putting some holes in the top here actually lets the air out that's sort of being dragged around by the wheel. So I will be doing that, but that will be a thing that I've got to do something, because I think that might be like the IVA won't like it, so I'm not too sure quite how I'm going to tackle that. Okay, so we're next morning. Let's unwrap it and see if it's all glued together. Yeah, that Gorilla Glue stuff seems to work quite well, and the thing that they said about it on the Easy Composites is when it sets, it's more or less the same hardness as the foam. So when you're sanding where there's joins, it doesn't kind of create a difference, which when stuff's different hardness, it makes it very difficult to get an even finish. That's looking okay. I think what I'll do is just give this a rough sand, and then I want to put a couple more bits into where that's quite flexible. A couple more bits in 3D print, a couple more of those Aero brackets to stiffen up the sides a bit. And then I've just got to think about how I'm going to link the two bits together. I'm going to just give this a very rough sand first, but before I do that, I'm going to get me a mask and I'm going to get a vacuum cleaner. I use this sanding block because it stresses quite a lot on the Easy Composites site by using a block. So I put first layer of the body filler stuff on, then because I can never really get it on without holes and little dimples and stuff. So what I'm going to do is just with the electric sander is just kind of get rid of all the very, very high bits and then try and give it a sort of almost a skim, and then that's my kind of starter for 10 really. So a day or so later, I've got a fairly good layer of the plastic padding or body filler over it, but we're still got quite a few little potholes to do. So I'm going to fill those in now. Hopefully the bulk of it is going to then be ready for the first layer of the mold stuff. I've 3D printed these, so these are going to kind of be my bit that will merge around the wheel arch. So I'll attach these, and I'm just working out this top bit as well, the best way to kind of have a bit on there. I might use that, I've got a little bit of spare of that plastic I'm using for the front end, so I think I might use that for the mold as it's fairly stiff. I'm not 100% on that. Anyway, so I'm going to get on with that, and it's I don't know, it's a long old process this. So I think I'm going to start calling these little bits a middle eight to the video. So it's my little trying to be a advocate for autistic people. Have a little chat about this. Okay, so what's that one all about, and why am I telling you about it? So it's an autistic trait. You don't have to be autistic to have it, and so not all autistic people have it. Some neurotypical people have it, but from my understanding it's far more common amongst autistic people, and it's one of the traits I have. And as I said to you lots of times before, I'm autistic. I don't mind. It's the way I am. I don't want to be fixed. It is probably one of the few traits that has been a bit of a pain in the neck to me over the years. So I'm not so, there are some people who are so face blind. I was listening to All in the Mind podcast once, and they were talking about it. And there was a lady on there who was so face blind, she actually didn't recognise herself in holiday photos and thought her husband was having an affair. Yeah, I'm not that bad. But I will tell you a little story so you can see how it affects me, and hopefully that might make you realise how it might affect people you know. So, a long time ago, when I used to work in the MOD, I commissioned weapon systems for the Navy. So I was on Navy, brand new build Navy ships for quite a long time. And I would work very closely alongside the maintainer, who was normally a chief petty officer in the Navy. Now, these systems are quite big, so the smallest of them took 6 weeks to commission. And some of them took 4 or 5 months. Particularly what I'm talking about was a 6 week work. So I was working alongside this chief for 6 weeks. It just happens I'd worked alongside the same chief on a previous ship a couple of years before. So I'd known this guy pretty well for quite some time. You work quite closely with them. You go and have a cup of tea down in the mess with them sometimes, that kind of thing. This particular chap I'd probably worked with quite closely for 10 weeks or more. So, this is the story. So I'm out shopping in Pompey, in Portsmouth, with a mate. And this guy was with this lady who I didn't recognise, stopped and started chatting to me. And, I kind of was chatting and doing my best to hold a conversation, all the time thinking, I don't know who this person is. Anyway, chat, small talk, weather, all those things I really struggle to small talk about. And then we go on our way. The guy I was shopping with, who was an old friend from, I'd known for years and years, he said to me, "You didn't know who that was, did you?" And I said, "No." Anyway, that was the end of that. And obviously this person knew me, and it was bugging me for a little bit. Then, Monday, I go into work, I go on the ship, and guess who I see? He's in a uniform, of course, and he's on a ship where I expect to see him, rather than in civvies out shopping. Yep. So the person who I'd been working with quite closely for quite some time was the person I bumped into at the shops and I did not recognise. So that's how it affects me. It makes it pretty awkward sometimes, because that was, really pretty awkward. That's probably the worst sort of thing it's hit me. But reason I'm telling you this, if you have autistic people in your life, there's a fairly good chance they will have some level of face blindness. So what I'm saying to you is, if you see them out and about and you say hello and it's not where they expect to see you and they seem a bit vague, it might be because they actually don't recognise you because you're not where they expect to see you. Do you see what I mean? You see where I'm coming from? And it's a bit embarrassing, really, because everyone expects everyone to recognise people that they know. I even have it with people like neighbours who drive past. If they've got a new car, they might wave to me and I'm looking going, who's that? Because what's her name round the corner is suddenly in an Audi where she's normally in a BMW. So I don't know who that person is in the Audi. I knew who the person was in the BMW. Anyway, there we go. That's that bit done. Hopefully these little bits, I'm going to do a few more bits about the different traits that autistic people have and how they affect autistic people, but more to the point, how they might affect non-autistic people and how you might be able to not necessarily help, but at least have tolerance and understanding if these things happen to you. And by the way, I'm trying to use this follower thing again. If it's annoying, I don't know. Does it work? Does it not work? Do you prefer it? Do you prefer me moving around? Just comment in, you know, because I do try and make these videos so people like them and follow them. I know sometimes you think I probably don't. If this thing moving around is very annoying, please tell me in the comments. If you think it's actually quite good and works quite well, tell me in the comments. I'm gradually building up the layers of the plastic padding and smoothing off, and now I've started on the top as well. So I've given it one sort of kind of throw it on layer, just knocked off the high points, and then I've given it a second layer and tried to start sort of smoothing a bit, and I let that harden off, get the sander on it, then fill in all the low points, which there's going to be loads. So we've got yet more plastic padding and yet more rubbing down, and I'm nearly there. I've just got a couple, a largish blemish there in just a couple of these little holes, which I suspect were bubbles in the plastic padding that I've then rubbed down through. I'm sure if there's a way of stopping doing that. I'm trying to mix it up as smooth as I can, but as always, if you know of an answer or better way of doing it, please let me know. Anyway, I am going to leave it there because there's lots and lots of video for this part now, and I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger, because before the next one I'm going to be painting on that resin that last time when I did the nose cone melted half of the buck I'd made, and I had to sort of virtually start from scratch again. So it's a cliffhanger. A bit like Doctor Who, this, isn't it, watching this? Ooh. Yeah, so what's the cliffhanger? The cliffhanger is, will this all fall apart? Will the beginning of the next video be me sobbing in the corner because the whole bloody thing has turned into a molten mess of plastic padding and 3D printing? Or will I be smiling because I've moved forward a stage? Catch you all soon. Bye. Oh yeah, so part 43, why is it significant? Right, 43 was always my race number when I was racing motorbikes. I say always, it was whenever I had the option of a race number. And why 43? Well, my favourite rider was Kevin Schwantz, who was 34. I couldn't possibly ride with his number, so it was sort of backwards. And also the two digits added together are 7, which hopefully anyone watching my channel will know. That's Barry Sheen's race number. And of course, as you may be cottoning on to now, I'm a bit of a Hitchhikers fan. Now, yes, Hitchhikers, the answer to life, universe and everything is 42. Well, I'd like to think that my race number was one more than the answer to everything. So, did you get it right?